Hello, Asheville City fans. Today I am joined by Mathis Mennell, the Blues' new Chief Operating Officer of Sporting and Club Operations. Mathis, how are you doing today?
Anthony, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. How are things in Charlotte?
Doing well down here. Starting to get a little cool, weather's starting to get nice. Gotta love it.
Yeah, we're fully in fall. We're fully in fall here. Leaves are starting to change. A little bite in the air in the mornings. Fall has come to Asheville, so good
Yeah,
time of year.
love to see it. Congrats on the new position, by the way.
Thank you. I'm excited. It's going to be a challenge, and I mean that in the most positive of ways. But I'm super excited, and I'm sure we'll probably delve into this later. But yeah, it's really cool. I'm really fortunate, and a lot of work to do, but I'm excited about the project.
Well, you spent over a decade on the West Coast, winning titles at Loyola Marymount before making the move to UNC Asheville in 2015. That's a pretty big change. What drew you to the mountains then, and how has that initial decision to plant roots in Nashville prepared you for this leadership role now?
I think that it was a big change. I think it was maybe softened a little bit because I'm originally a million years ago from Bristol, Tennessee, so I was pretty familiar with the Blue Ridge Mountains, and came over to Asheville and did the Biltmore as a kid. So it wasn't like this complete culture shock. Footballing wise, certainly different. It's certainly coming from Los Angeles and just the sheer amount of the popularity and the population of that area coming to Asheville. But one of the things that literally upon my arrival in the town is Asheville's a soccer town, and there's a long, deep-rooted history of the game here. And Hank Steinbrecher, of U.S. soccer legend, and was the president and responsible in a lot of ways for the '94 World Cup. He started his career at Warren Wilson College, so like. It's stories like that that kind of draw you into this town. But like in terms of raising roots here, I mean, Asheville's an amazing place to live. So I think that it was kind of an easy decision. But yeah, it was a change. And, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that change is necessary always has to be viewed negatively. You know what I mean? And it's just different. But I think that coming here, and one of the things that, when I got here, I was like, okay, like, you never know how long you're going to be in a place, especially in college soccer. But I quickly was like, I think Asheville's where I want to be. It's like, okay, so how do I add quality, to the soccer ecosystem, to the soccer landscape? And that's been, kind of a driving force for the past 10 years. If there's anything that, I or my family do with regards to the game, it's like, okay, how are we adding quality to that? And that's been, and that's kind of been important to us. And then, in this new role, it's, you know, I was not brought in to fix Asheville City. Asheville City is humming, and Jimmy and Ryan, Stacy, Lydia, Megan, all these owners, Tim, and they've all done such a magnificent job of building this club. So it's like, for me, it's almost a little bit daunting. I'm like, hey, if I'm coming into this role, I want to make sure I don't screw it up. So, and but it's been good. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I'd say 10 years qualifies you as a longtime Asheville resident now. So as a longtime Asheville resident, you've coached at UNC Asheville, Warren Wilson, and most recently as an assistant with Asheville City. You have a unique 360-degree view of soccer in this region. Looking back, what has been the most significant evolution of the game here, and how does Asheville City fit into the future you envision for Western NC soccer?
Well, I mean, one, I think there's a couple of things that you have to talk about. That is that, AB, YSA, HFC, Mike Rochika, and those guys over there and gals, they've done a really cool job, and that's a really well-run club. With that being said, one of the challenges, and Asheville produces good players, and people are certainly passionate about it. The rub is you are in Western North Carolina. So there's just the sheer population part of it, right? And that's one of the things where, we are going to produce good players, and we've done so on the women's side, we've done so on the men's side. The difference is you go to Los Angeles, there's literally 350 to 400 kids that are able to play at the top level of Division I women's soccer, Division I men's soccer every year coming out of high school. Just because of our population, it might be one. Some years it might be two. Some years it might be none. Some years maybe it's three. So kind of understanding where that is in the ecosystem. But at the same time, that the level of play in Nashville I was pleasantly surprised. I'm like, oh, this is okay. And when I say okay, I mean, quite positive. The rub is it's just that iron sharpens iron. So if I look at it, and it's sort of a 360. And even at my time at UNC Asheville, we came to UNC Asheville, I think we raised the bar. And then Mick Giordano came, when he took over, he was my assistant when he left, and he took the bar at UNC Asheville on the men's side and took it even higher. And that's like, okay, wow, that's really cool. And as it grows, I think that, Asheville, it does a pretty good job of trying to be progressive and growing with the game. And so I think that where Asheville City fits in is this is kind of a natural progression, and especially, for us to have, you know, arguably, and I think when you combine it, I mean, certainly when you take in the USL2 team and the USLW team, I think we have the best, amateur, semi-professional, whatever you want to call it, club in the country. And obviously the club, and it's well documented, we have aspirations to continue even higher. I think that's a natural progression. And I also think that when you look at the support that the club has had, not only in just sheer crowd size, but the vocalness and the passion of the fans, that's amazing. But then when you look into the community support and, we have become a viable, we're a hot ticket in the summer, and this is something to do. And with that, though, then businesses and organizations to want to partner with us recognize that there's real value in that. So that's where I see us going. But like with anything with growth, sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes it's 10 steps forwards and no steps back. But just being patient and being resilient about like, okay, we know where we want to go. How do we, on a daily basis, what do we need to do today to help us get where we want to get to tomorrow? And then just being patient and allowing that to unfold. So long-winded answer. I think that Asheville City fits firmly in the soccer ecosystem here. And I think it's in a really important complementary part to all the other great parts of our soccer ecosystem in Western North Carolina. And I think that there's just continued growth and evolution, and we just have to continue to be patient and put our head down and keep going.
And you bring over 3 decades of experience across college, club, and youth soccer. Club president Jimmy Wheeler noted you have a rare, quote, rare blend of sporting leadership, operational discipline, and relationship building. How do you translate the lessons learned from coaching into your new responsibilities as COO, where you'll be overseeing sporting and club operations?
Oh, one, that's very kind of Jimmy to say that. And I think that really means the fact that you said 3 decades. Thank you, Anthony, for reminding me that I am getting long in the tooth. But I think it's a really good question. I think that for me in this new role, sporting and club operations, I'm really blessed and fortunate right now in terms of the sporting landscape. Maxi, obviously, look at the success of last season. He's a fantastic choice. So the women are dialed in, and Coach Wells, Scott's done a fantastic job in his time here. So the men are, continued success. So for me, in the sporting side of it, right now, that's not going to be the biggest piece of my job. And I'm very fortunate in that because, both of those programs have a really good handle on what their game model is, how they want to play, the types of players they want to bring in. So for them, it's like, okay, how do I help you all with whatever it is and add value add? Now, along those lines, the cool thing for me, and I think it's been, and having conversations with them, because I've been around 30 years, I've seen a lot of stuff. And I've made a ton of mistakes, and done some things probably that are good along the way. So I think that's helpful, just having a sounding board for them. Like, hey, I want to try this. Okay, I've seen that. This is maybe this is where it's worked other places, and this is, the parameters with the other places you said, can we do that here? Can we add our own tweak to it? So I think, just being a resource for both of them and for both programs, and that's really cool. Now, in terms of the club operations part, this is why I got my doctorate in. So for me, being around and then being applied, and I talked about it, I'm not coming in, I'm not adding anything revolutionary. Like, I haven't come in and said, hey, we're going to do this. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Literally, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Like, this is a club that has been built from the ground up, and it's really awesome. So now for me to be able to come in and be like, hey, I've got all this really cool experience, and then I've got all this academic training, and it's something I'm passionate about. Like, okay, how do we do this? And the learning curve has been great. And, everybody has been so welcoming and just kind of opening up. It's like, this is the way it's been done in the past. Here's some good, here's some bad. Here are the things we've tried. Here are the things we want to do. And like I mentioned before, it's like, can you continue to evolve? Because, and Johan Cruyff, and I'm going to paraphrase him, but like this is a simple game. Like it's not hard. You're going to have 11 people, a ball, and two big nets, two big metal things, and try to kick. Now the reality is it's really difficult to play well. In terms of the business part of sport, and especially as it pertains to soccer, it's not rocket surgery. You want to bring in more revenue than you put out. Great. At the same time, how do you do that well and then maintain, kind of our club identity? Because this isn't about making money. We want to put the best product on the field possible. We want to create the best player experience for the players possible. We want to then also to be as the best community partner possible. And like when you do all those things and you're kind of rooted in what's your why, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to be the best at everything we do. And the best doesn't necessarily meaning top of the leaderboards. Sometimes the best is, when a young 5-year-old, when she comes to one of our matches, if she walks away having a great time, that's amazing. If she comes away looking onto the pitch and seeing these wonderful role models, that's amazing. And then, when they walk away and like, wow, that was really cool. Like that's something to be part of and part of that passionate experience. So that's kind of going to blend into everything we do. It's like, are we doing what's best for the game? Are we doing what's best for the club? Are we doing what's best for the community? And as you kind of walk your way around all of those topics, the decision making becomes pretty easy. You know what I mean? So, and that's pretty cool. But like to be able to do this and, and what I would consider my hometown. I mean, my kids all live here, my granddaughter lives here. Like, yeah, man, like that's pretty rad.
And you stated your aim is simple: world-class habits, local roots. Can you break down what world-class habits look like on a daily basis for both the USL League Two men's and USLW League women's programs? And how will you ensure that the club remains authentically connected to its community-driven mission?
I That's probably the $1 million question. And I think that if I come back to it, like what is the best thing? And when I say what is the best thing, that decision tree is like that's not going to lie with me. Like you've got to take the temperature, right? You got, we hear this is on a million Instagram memes, like read the room, bro. You kind of have to read the room, and there's obviously, you know, there's some things that are really easy to figure out, like, hey, this is the best thing. But then there's other topics that are challenging, and there's other topics that you're going to get pushback on, and that's debate that I really enjoy. And like, I'm a fully admitted Swiftie, right? And I just think she's awesome. And this is not the forum for me to tell you what a great role model she is, not only for women, but for just humans in general. But she just put out, and she put out this new album, and she just came out with a clip, and she's like, I embrace the chaos. Like, I'm not the art police. And basically she's saying, I'm okay if people don't like the album. I'm really proud of it. And I love the work I did. And I just thought that was so refreshing because it's such a positive way, because she could be like, oh, they don't like the album. Now you could argue that she's like, it's really easy for her to say that because, the Fate of Ophelia, the first track of the album, already has 30 million plus streams. So you're like, oh, it's really easy for you to say that. But then when you think about it, it's like, actually, no, because it's not about the money for her. I mean, she's proven it's not about the money. She's a brilliant businesswoman, but it's not about the money. It's about the art. And for her to be like, hey, this is my interpretation. I'm going to do what I think is best. And I'm going to pour myself into it. If you like it, awesome. If you don't, I'll take your feedback. And she's not saying, hey, Nick, keep your opinions to yourself. She's like, that's not my job. So, in a funny way, I'm using Taylor's advice, like, hey, listen, we're going to do what we think is best. But at the same time, sometimes there's things that we're going to get really, really right. And then sometimes they're going to be like, our public, our players, our communities can be like, maybe you should tweak that a little bit. Well, it would behoove us to like, listen, and that's going to be, so walking that tightrope, again, I wish I could immediately say, hey, listen, tickets are only going to cost $1. Drinks are going to cost 25 cents and the food is free. Unfortunately, until I didn't win the lottery when it was $1 billion the other day, so I can't do that yet. So, but I mean, making those decisions, like just what is taking all these stakeholders, what's the best way and most sustainable way forward? Because the goal is for the club to be here 50 years past whenever, we all move on, you know?
For sure, for sure. And your role is explicitly focused on integrating front office and club operations, connecting everything from corporate and community partnerships to player experience, logistics, and match day delivery. What is the single most critical area for improvement you identify that will directly impact player experience and performance on the field?
Improvement's a kind of a funny word, and I probably am going to do the artful dodger here and sidestep that a little bit, because everything can be sharpened. Because the reality is, unless we end every season conceding 0 goals and lifting a trophy, there's always room for improvement, right? Does that make sense? Now, on the flip side of that, it's like when we talk about that integrating these two worlds, because it's like you have the sporting and the club operations. So I liken myself as a translator. And I think I'm probably maybe uniquely suited for this. Is one, I'm from here. So I have passion for the club. I was at the club's first match, my son is the youngest debutant for the club, when he played for them as a 15-year-old for the first team. So it's like we're an Asheville City family, both not only supporting, but like it's like we've been here since the beginning. But it just translating. So can I translate what the technical and the sporting side want? Can I translate that so I hear what they want, translate that into the business, into the ownership, and then vice versa. And then because I've walked in both worlds, I think that, at least I'm hopeful, that we're going to be able to kind of move it forward. Because sometimes, and you see this in sport, I mean, you're looking at the WNBA right now, that the players and the leadership they're speaking two different languages. So to being able to translate that, and then also to having both sides understand that I know exactly what their language is, I think that's going to be key. But in terms of improving it, until we finish both seasons with both teams winning every single game, never conceding a goal, and always winning a trophy, there will always be a million and one things for us to improve upon, so yeah. So I've answered the question without saying anything at all. So I'm clearly ready for the public facing role part of this.
I was going to say you're masterful at this already. This is just a warm up too.
Yeah.
Well, the goal is clear, obviously, by what you've been saying, pursuing championships for your supporters. What are two or three key strategic pillars you're implementing to ensure both the men's and women's programs are consistently competing at a national level and pushing for dual titles in USL League Two and the W League?
It's interesting. I think that probably, and this is the fascinating thing, is that because when you look at this, we really have two constituent bases that we have to serve, right? And I'm gonna call one of them the community, and that is our fans and everything that comes with that, right? So that's one. And then the other one is the players, because our players, we're not paying them salaries, right? So what we have to do is we have to maximize the player experience. So the great part is the South So Blues, our fans, man, our players love playing at home. Great. Are we providing them really good coaching? Yes. Also, too, and having coaches that really kind of understand the role, because these are all these women and men that come and play here. They know how to play. They're good players. So it's kind of like it's a different role, right? And it's a unique role because you're not necessarily you only have them for a short amount of time. So you've got to get your game model implemented right away. But then also, too, they have to enjoy it. And because we're not paying them, they're free to go at any time. And this is a story you hear around USL2 and around USLW. If you get it wrong, they'll bounce and they'll go back to their colleges. So maximizing that player experience so that we are giving them something that, like, this is awesome. Now, it's really easy. Asheville's great. So there's a whole lot of positive things about Asheville, but literally just creating that player experience of like, hey, and just sharpening it every year. And I think that we have, the club has done a fantastic job of moving the needle. So now it's like, how do we take the next step? And I think that when you get the player experience right, combine that with, good coaching and then the fantastic support that already exists, I think it's a recipe for us to be the best, and I think that that's kind of the goal. Like, last year, and national rankings in $1.89 will get you a Diet Coke. But I think there's something to be said that there was enough of, the buzz, us being part of the lexicon, whatever. Asheville City was, at some point considered by whoever was doing those polls, the number one team in USL2 and the number one team in USLW. That's pretty cool, especially when you reference when I talked about like our population base in terms of compared to some of the, other areas around the country. So that's, how do we just continue to build on that? And that's, the best way to do that is really look hard in the mirror at the end of each season and be like, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? What can get better? What do we need to replicate? What do we need to scrap? And just not taking it personally and understand that a ton of work and a ton of personal effort have gone into all these things. And if you approach it with just kind of this, real, just a really honest way, take the, like your work in this was amazing but it didn't work. So cool. We need to change. Right. So just having those conversations. And then again, also too, like, the first thing I did when you're talking with the ownership group and with Jimmy and, the coaches, I'm like, listen, my job is to make your life easier. That's it. And then let's go from there.
One thing that's for sure, even in the most successful season, there's going to be peaks and there's going to be valleys. You've used the phrase sleeves up, heads down, and we go again. In the context of a long, challenging season where momentum can shift, how does this mindset serve as a rallying cry for the staff, players, and front office, especially when facing adversity?
You know, adversity is a funny word, right? And I always kind of chuckle when we talk about adversity in sport. I'm very fortunate to go to the Air Force Academy, very fortunate to serve on active duty in the United States military. So sport is an adversity. You know what I mean? That being said, and then also too, when you look at what we went through in Asheville over the past year, right? That's adversity. But for me, when you look at the way Western North Carolina responded as a region, and in large part the Southeast and the entire country, the amount, like the way people just sort of poured into, our community and helping us jumpstart the rebuilding process. And obviously we're not finished yet and we have a long way to go, but that was pretty awesome. And it literally, you just saw people like, the reality is whatever the task is, roll your sleeves up, put your head down. If you win, you go again, not too high in the highs. If you lose, we go again, not too high in the lows. Because at the end of the day, and by no means, I want to win every game, but this adversity that we face over a long season, what a gift. Because there's going to be other arenas, there's going to be other parts of your life that the lessons that you learn in adversity are going to be applicable. And that's really what sport is. Like literally sport is a metaphor for life. So if you can go through and you can compete your socks off and you can work and then, but compete in a way where you can shake hands with the opponent. And at the end of the day, like, wow, thank you so much for giving me a great game. That's really the whole endeavor. Right. And it's like, I'm going to be a nerd here for a second, but like if we get into the Latin part of compete, when you break down that compete is to strive together, not to conquer, not to be victorious, but to strive together. And again, yes, we want to win every game. But when I come back to the adversity part, I don't, there's so much more in life that's adverse. So for me, you look at all these things that we're going to go through as an organization and as teams and as players. And like, as you can continue like, hey, listen, I know this is hard, but this is a gift. It's just like that test, that calculus test. And for me, it was research methods when I was getting my doctorate. Yeah, that was, I guess, could be seen as adversity. At the same time, it's like, you just roll your sleeves up, you put your head down and you go again. And when you get through that, win or lose, and again, I want to win every match, you're going to be pretty excited about the way you endeavored to do it, So, and I know that sounds really trite. I know that sounds really cliche, but it's like, if you actually try to, as much as you can, do your life in that way, you're going to find out you're probably going to end up on the podium more times than you're not.
100%. You were part of the coaching staff for the men's programs during its two most successful USL2 seasons to date, including the national semifinal berth. How will you take the lessons and proven processes from that success and apply them to both the men's and women's programs to build a consistent championship caliber culture?
Well, I mean, one, it's about the team, and Coach Wells put together a really good team, and it was a lot of fun, and the chance to work with my son, and people are like, and there's times, and they're like, wow, you did a really great job with Johnny. I'm like, dude, we never worked together before we got to Asheville City, so it's like, and he's a really good player. But there are a whole bunch of people that poured into that. I just was his dad. So the past 2 years to be able to work with him and the talent that we had on the men's team, that's the biggest piece in this. I mean, the reality is you've got to go get good people and you've got to go get players. Maxie has got a good handle on that. The women's staff is, the women's team has always had a good handle on it. Scott's always had a good handle on it. And also too, I mean, we've had good players at Asheville City since the first year in 2017. So having good players is the first part. So the reality is how do I help the club to make sure that our player experience is elite? Because if our player experience is elite, then it's really easy for the coaches to go and compete with other USL2 and USLW teams to get the best players. So that's the first thing, get good people. And that's leadership 101, right? Then the other part is the process, and go back to that just reflection phase. Like, hey, this worked, this didn't. And, can we be really honest about, the things that we like and the things that have to change? And as long as we continue to evolve, I think that's the key, right?
Yep. Evolution is key for sure. Always can be better. We talked about that earlier. There's always room for improvement. And you were committed to create an environment that enables players to pursue their dreams and use soccer as, quote, a force for good in our community. Beyond winning, what is the most important measurable impact you hope to achieve in the Asheville community through the club's platform during your time as COO?
Um, that's a really good question. And I think that if I'm really, really honest, we won't know. And we've been around now for 8 years, 9 years as a club. I don't know that we're really going to be able to measure that for another 10 years. And this is what I mean by that. If we get this right, like I mentioned before, those 4, 5, 6-year-old little girls, those 6, 7, 8-year-old little boys, if we turn them into fans of football, great. That's really the game. But if they walk away and say, hey, that was a really positive experience, that's kind of the key, right? And then in terms of being force for good, it's like we want to do it the right way. We want to have players that are forward facing to our community, that are accessible. And also too, like we bring in these, 50 players a year on the men's and the women's team combined. I hope they all get to be pros. I hope they all get to the highest level of sport. Some very much, some will, and we've seen that. Like some will get to the highest levels, some won't. That being said, if those players leave their time with Asheville City and they're like, hey, I want to come back to Asheville, that place was awesome. When? If our community is like, hey, I want to continue to go to games, I really like watching, the matches. I really like the experience. I really like the fact the club, is trying to make the community better, whether it's through the Next 11 fund or, there's a million things that, that's a win. So I don't know that we'll have this answer for another 10 years. What I can say though, is from 2017, 2016, when the club started to where it is now, 100%, we've done really positive things. So we're absolutely on the right track. And I've said this a couple times that like I'm, right now this version of the club is standing on the shoulders of the giants of the players and people that have come before. Great. We've got to continue to move that forward. And what that looks like on a daily basis, back to that decision tree. What's best for the community? What's best for the players? What's best for the club? And just, if you're constantly asking yourself those 3 questions, yeah, pretty good chance of getting it right.
And when it's all said and done, and you look back at your time as COO, what is the legacy you want to have left? How do you want players, fans, staff, and community partners to remember your time at Asheville City Soccer Club?
Oh, I mean, I love the sleeves up, head down, we go again. But I mean, probably the best way, left it better than I found it. That's, and what I've been really fortunate, had all these really cool experiences. Um, and I've made a concerted effort. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. But if you leave it better than you found it, then like I just really think that's a really cool way to go through life. You know what I mean? And chapters end and things and evolution. But if you left it better and you found it and you endeavored to do that, sometimes you won't leave it better than you found it. Sometimes you'll leave it the same. Asheville City is already excellent. So it's pretty like I don't have it'd be pretty ridiculous for me to say, oh, I'm gonna make it so much better. it's really good. So, but can I, through whatever it is, whether it be ideas or just sweat equity, can I leave it better than I found it? And at the end of the day, if that's what the reflection is for everyone, then that is absolutely a win.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to the season.
Thank you. It'll be fun. Go Blues.